All right. So Peter is an executive coach that really focuses on a couple of things. And one of them is this topic of Ikigai. But Peter has a really interesting background. He's been a finance exec for many, many years, and then decided to leave that world and go into executive coaching. And the interesting thing, and when Peter and I talked, he's been such an experienced leader and executive for so many years. It's just such a natural thing for him to step into executive coaching. And so, you know, he's got lots of great stories about how he's helped people. And Ikigai is a very interesting topic. So, Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you so much for being with us. And we're excited to hear more about Ikigai. And for any questions, put them in the chat, and Peter will allocate some time to answer any questions. So, Peter, take it away.
Well, thank you, Christy, and good morning. Good morning, everyone. I want to start by just a quick shout out to Peter Clifford, who put me in touch with Christy initially, which is one of the reasons why I'm here today. So thank you, Peter, for doing that. And Sig, I do want to learn about this central camera thing that you have going on, because that's awesome. I didn't even know that existed. So again, thank you for having me here this morning. We will have plenty of time at the end of the presentation. I've kept it pretty short and tight. Plenty of time for Q&A. A little bit on my background. As Christy mentioned, I was a financial executive. I worked in financial planning and strategic analysis at HBO for over 30 years. I did work in the US and also internationally. A lot of it was finance and, as the title suggests, strategy related as well. On the international front, I worked with our ventures in Latin America, Europe, and Asia. And my group was sort of the conduit for them in communicating their strategies, their plans, their financials, opportunities, risks with our corporate office. In the US market, one of our largest responsibilities on my team was the negotiation of distributor agreements. So all the agreements with companies that you may have heard of, like Comcast and Cox Cable, Verizon when they got into the video business, and now fast forward to the last few years, I worked on the Apple deal, the Hulu deal, the deal with YouTube that allows HBO to be distributed via those streaming services as well. A lot of people ask me, how do you go from finance and strategy to coaching? And it's for me anyway, it was not a huge leap, because I was always in my career passionate about staff development and about empowering my staff and empowering my team and encouraging them to stretch boundaries. And all of those things are central and hallmarks of executive coaching. A lot of coaching centers around mindset, viewing challenges as potential opportunities, sometimes small behavioral changes. And by that, I mean how you show up and how people perceive you. And these are all things I worked on with my staff throughout my career. So it wasn't a huge stretch for me. It turns out that the background is really helpful these days in coaching, because what a lot of clients are looking for is not simply a coach, but a coach that has operations experience. Now, while I didn't work in operations, I worked in operations finance. I supported the operations of home box office. So right place, right time. I can't say I was intentional about going into the space at this point in time, but that is what the marketplace is looking for. So that's how I got into coaching. As far as Ikigai, it was a strange journey. I met an individual when I started my coaching practice. I was networking many hours a day, every single day, and I was randomly put in touch with someone in London who had studied Ikigai under the gentleman who created the program in the Netherlands. And he himself is a very experienced coach. He used to run a 150 coach practice for a company called Harrison, which is a huge global enterprise in the United States. And he decided he wanted to do something different after doing this for 20 years. And he traveled on a family vacation to Sardinia, which is one of the 5 blue zones in the world. And I'm going to get into that in the presentation in a few minutes. And it is there that he came across the concept of Ikigai, which is purpose. What is that thing that drives you, that motivates you, that gets you up in the morning, that just energizes you? That's the essence of Ikigai. Another thing that you should know about me, and I'll relate it to Ikigai in a second, is that I'm not the kind of person that goes after the bright, shiny object of the moment. I like to ground everything that I do in science and in data and in facts. So as it relates to Ikigai, there have been a lot of already things that neuroscientists have done. So for example, if you have a person say things like, what do I care about? What's important? What do I value? Which are all central to the notion of passion and purpose, right? If you have these people say this while they're getting an MRI, a very interesting, and it happens all the time, an interesting thing occurs. More blood flows to the prefrontal cortex, the newer part of the brain, which is associated with executive decision-making. And when that happens, that part of the brain can control an ancient part of the brain called the amygdala, which is, I'm sure we've all had this experience. So you're in a meeting and someone really pisses you off. You get an email and you're really pissed off. That's called amygdala hijack. That's when the amygdala gets flooded. And when you've, I'm sure, been told, never answer an email like that instantaneously, think about it. What people really mean by that is allow the amygdala hijack to go away, right? So the point of that story is that purpose and passion can actually help control that fear, aggression part of the ancient brain, which is related to the fight or flight syndrome. It was necessary for the species survival very early on. It continues to exist, but it sometimes hijacks us in the type of work that we do when you're dealing with certain individuals and certain situations. Passion and purpose help to trump those feelings and keep that amygdala hijack thing that we all experience a little bit under control. So that's one of the scientific benefits of this as well. The other, I'll close with, and then we'll jump into the presentation. Companies also have Ikigai. Companies have purpose. So there are some companies whose purpose is, and this is different from company strategy and how do we grow the revenues and all that kind of stuff. Some companies feel that they need to give back to the locations, the places where they do business out of. They're going to give back to the community, and that's their purpose, right? There could be many types of company purpose. The benefits to the company is that companies with purpose, and again, there are scientific studies on this, they're more productive, financial performance tends to be higher, they tend to have very dedicated, loyal, energized employees. And there's now a lot of work being done on company purpose and how can executive coaches like myself go into organizations and help companies have that conversation. Okay, so with that, I want to start the presentation. The presentation will not take long, and then we will have, like I said, plenty of time to do some Q&A. All right. So here we go. Can everyone see that? Okay, so let's get started. So the word Ikigai does not have an English translation. There are a lot of ways to kind of get close to the essence of the meaning. It means things like reason for being. When you parse the word, Iki refers to life. Gai refers to benefit or worth. As it relates to the coaching aspect of Ikigai and the life meaning in places like Okinawa, which is one of the blue zones, which I'm going to get into in a second, it means to discover and unlock your purpose. What is that thing that will drive you? Before we get into the blue zones, as an example, I just had a client who was out of work for about a year. I coached him for 7 months. Incredible finance executive who also had experience in sales. As a result of Ikigai coaching, once I explained it to him, he wanted to go through the process. We went through the process. He now got hired by a company called, trying to think of the name of the company. They compete with Nielsen. The name of the company is escaping me right now. The point of the story is he's in a completely different industry. He's being asked to deliver a completely different skill set. He will get there. The company saw the passion with which he spoke about what he was going to bring to the table. And he attributes his getting this role in something completely new and different to the Ikigai conversations that we happened. So I just wanted to put that out there. So now the blue zones. Scientists discovered this quite a while ago. I'm going to say this has been sort of on the table for about 20 years, where people started to discover that there were 5 locations in the world where people tend to live to be 100 years old or more. And it's not just, creaking your way there. These are people that are very healthy, very vital. I read a story just recently of a shepherd in Sardinia in his late 90s, standing up straight and tall, his back straight as a board. He would walk his sheep and his goats at least 5 miles a day. And you would think the guy was like 20 or 30 years younger. It was what the article was implying. And this is very common in these 5 areas. And scientists were just puzzled, like, why these 5 areas? What are the commonalities? And after studying it, if you look at the blue zone life lessons in the lower right-hand corner, that legend, it's those 4 things that contribute to the commonality among the 5 areas: move naturally, right tribe, eat wisely, and right outlook. Another common feature that's not in there is that these areas tend to have a lot of really nice weather, lots of sunshine, lots of opportunity. People get outside, get that natural vitamin D, be out, move around, et cetera, et cetera. Fun fact, I was just curious why they call these areas the blue zones. It turns out when they did the first scientific symposium to kind of discuss all this stuff, the scientist who was up on stage had a map of the globe similar to what I'm showing you. He had a blue marker. He circled these 5 areas in blue. And when they were doing Q&A, people started referring to the blue zones because he had circled these things in blue, and the name stuck. So that's the name and the reason why. So I'm going to do this next piece of the prezo from the context of Okinawa specifically. And the reason why I want to do that is the place on Earth that has the highest proportion of people over 100 years old. And it's been determined that Ikigai plays a significant role in this. So we're going to do the legend piece one at a time. Move naturally is exercise. You won't find many gyms on Okinawa. The way people exercise is, it's just incorporated as a natural part of their life. They're walking. As I said, the weather's great. They're outdoors. They're with family. They, in Japan specifically, it's customary to sit on the floor. They can rise and sit up to 100 times a day. In our world, in a gym, that's called like deep squats, right? And if you don't think that's exercise, try doing 40 and see how you feel. It's tremendous exercise, but they're not going to gyms and grunting and lifting weights. They're just living, right? That's the significant difference. Also in Okinawa specifically, all centenarians tend to have a garden that they maintain. And part of that is the healthy eating, which we're going to get to in a second. The social aspect is huge. In Okinawa, they call it their moai. And this is the group that you know has your back. They will provide you financial support, emotional support, whatever type of support you need. So in this type of setting, people know that they have other people to rely on, right? You're not alone, no matter what you're facing. And that is a huge psychological, emotional, and it's even a physical boost. And you know, the math is pretty straightforward, but to just state it anyway, if most of these people are living up to and beyond 100 years old, these friendships last 80 plus years. As far as the eating healthy, it's largely a plant-based diet, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables. They do consume meat and fish, but it's very, very moderate. And they have this habit called harahachibu, which is just eat until your stomach is 80% full. So it's not a culture that will have, you know, 5-course meals by any stretch. And as I mentioned, gardens are typically maintained. It is very common for people to be bringing vegetables and such from their garden, freshly picked that day for the family meal. And then the final piece is the right outlook, and that's the Ikigai. As I say here, the purpose-driven pursuit, the reason why you get out of bed in the morning. And it doesn't have to be this, you know, large, you know, pursuit. It doesn't have to be you're searching for the cure for cancer. It can be whatever it is that brings you meaning and purpose in your life. As I became a coach, I never thought this would happen, but I've become this real neuroscience rather, nerd. I kind of started by talking a little bit about the brain function. This guy, Richard Davidson, is amazing. You can Google him and you'll see, you'll find a lot of stuff. He's done research for decades on the positive physical and psychological benefits associated with purpose, and these are scientific facts that he can back up. And the things that he's found is that purpose increases physical activity. You want to remain healthy. You want to remain vital. There's decreased chance of a stroke in people who follow the Ikigai. I'm going to call it lifestyle. Better cardiovascular health, reduced risk of death, better financial health, psychological resilience. So the benefits are just profound, and again, based in science. So the model itself, there's going to be a lot going on this next page. I'll kind of guide you through it. The way the Ikigai coaching model works is we focus on 3 large topics. And the first one is the one at the top. You love it. When I do Ikigai coaching, each one of these topics will take a minimum of a 2-hour conversation. It's usually closer to 3. Each one of the topics will explore roughly 20 questions meant to allow you to do a deep dive in the topic. So I give an example of some of these questions coming up. You love it might ask you a question about when you were a child, what are the kind of things that you gravitated toward? At some point in your life, I think we've all had this experience where you get so involved in something, you realize very late in the afternoon that you completely lost lunch and you had no idea it was 5 p.m. in the afternoon. And you were just consumed by something for hours and hours and hours. And I'll ask you, what were you doing? why were you so passionate about that? What was it about it that you completely lost track of time? So that's an example of the kind of questions. A couple of weeks later, we'll do You're Good at It. And what I do is I send the questions out ahead of time, and I send a way for you to write notes where the questions are, so that when we're spending the 2 hours, you're not thinking about stuff. You've already gone through the thought process. You're Good at It. Same thing. We'll do a deep dive on questions that are dedicated to drive toward what are you good at. Things like, what do you perceive as your strengths? What do, pick 5 people that know you really well. What are they going to say you're good at? And as we're starting to have that conversation, we're both, I and the client, are trying to find links. We're trying to find connections between the you love it and the you're good at it. In the final, the final bit of inquiry, reality check. Reality check has to do with a lot of things, and it's meant to be the almost like the business plan piece of it. And by that I mean, if you're like I left HBO and I started my own company, one of the questions in reality check is, if it takes you 2 years to get your company up and running, do you have the financial resources to be able to do that? Right? You can't just say, I'm going to stop working, I'm going to start a company, and expect that you're all of a sudden going to be making lots of money in 2 weeks. So reality check is as it suggests, it just is going to get you down to the core things that you also need to think about once you've identified those things that you love and you're good at. Reality check is also a check on what the marketplace values. So there might be something that you love and you're good at. If the reality check isn't there, there's an issue. So you can see the things I wrote in red here. If there's something that you love and you're good at it, so you have those two kind of checked off, but the reality check doesn't make sense for that one thing or 2 things that you've identified, you might be very happy, but you're not going to be able to make a living doing that, because the marketplace is saying, I don't value that. If there's something that you're really good at, let's say you're an accountant and you're a phenomenal accountant, reality check says really good accountants are in high demand, but you don't love it. You can make a good living at it, but you might not be very happy at it. And I had a specific example of that I've experienced that I could get into if you need to hear it or want to hear it. And similarly, if you love it and the marketplace places a value on it, but you're not good at it, it's just not going to be sustainable, because you don't have the skills. Doesn't mean you can't get there, but at that moment in time, you just don't have the skills to make it a sustainable enterprise. And as you can see in the middle, when you can check off all 3 circles, that's the Ikigai. You love it. There's a linkage to you're good at it, and you've gone through the reality check exercise to just make sure that you've thought about all the things in terms of, does the marketplace place a value on this thing that you are considering pursuing? So that's the model in a nutshell. In terms of the philosophy, some questions. And I actually gave you this one. What did you enjoy doing as a child? Do you ever get those feelings these days? When? So that's an example of the actual you love it question that I will pose. You're good at it. What kind of a role do you typically play in a group? Are you the leader? Do you provide like the additional perspective? Are you the fun person? Are you the person that brings people together? What kind of a role do you typically play? And that should and does, I can say from experience, provide a lot of insight into the type of skills that you have, which for a lot of people, until someone asks you this and spends 10 minutes doing a deep dive, you might have a vague notion, but you might not really even know. I can't tell you how many times people have said, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe that this is how this is shaking out. I never thought about this before. And then reality check. If I'm really honest, why haven't I taken this step yet? What has held you back? Again, an example of the reality check. So here's the Ikigai philosophy that goes beyond some of the stuff that I was just talking about, but which we've touched upon in some ways. The first one, stay active, don't retire, leave urgency behind, slow down. Number 3 is the hara hachi bu, eat until you're 80% full. Surround yourself with good friends. That's the right tribe notion. Get in shape through daily gentle exercise, natural exercise. Smile and acknowledge people around you. Reconnect with nature. Give thanks. Live in the moment and follow your passion. So that's it in terms of the presentation portion. I think we've left ourselves about a half an hour for Q&A. So Christy, take it away. I'm not sure exactly how you want to.
Okay, well, there's one question so far, but I think we're going to have others.
Okay.
Melanie asks, is it similar to the French raison d'être?
Yeah, raison d'être, reason for being. It's a very similar concept.
Okay. Okay. So given that so many people are in job search, how would you relate this to someone, a job seeker?
Mm-hmm. It depends where the job seeker sort of is in their search. I've coached people who, like the client that I said is now in a completely different industry and different role, and he's thriving. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do. It wasn't that he was past his past position and wanted something exactly the same with another organization. His questioning and his search was much deeper and much broader, right? It was, I'm not sure that I want to do the same thing. I know I'm really good at it and I could be really good at it, but what he was sort of struggling with was when he and I've had this with clients where I've said, envision your first day working for a similar company doing a similar role that you've done in the past, and what comes to mind, what comes up for you. And I had one person say, I'm walking in the office, I'm taking off my coat, I'm putting my attaché case down on the desk, I'm sitting down, and I'm not really thrilled. And what came up for him was he was just thinking about getting into that same old routine. That's not to say that that's a bad thing in and of itself. It's just for this individual, that's not what he wanted. He didn't want more of the same. He wanted something very different. So this was an individual who at the time was a pretty successful sales executive in a media company. And he's now doing real estate. He's managing properties in some really, really nice areas of the country. And he's loving life. Completely different role, right? And that's the kind of thing that Ikigai can bring up.
Yeah, and so that's interesting. So if you really look at the type of role that you want and how you feel about it, that's a pretty big indicator, whether or not you're looking in the right area. Yep. Don't you think also with Ikigai, if you're really true to yourself, that shows up with the interviewer? It shows up to the interviewer?
It will, because the passion and the excitement almost trumps the technical skills. I mean, if you don't have the technical skills, a lot of those individuals that are not right from a technical perspective will get weeded out very early on in the process. Right? When you're a finalist or a near finalist, it's these kinds of things that the interviewer is really looking for, because the technical skills, while it will get you hired, it is the leadership skills and its emotional intelligence, which is a hallmark of leadership, that's what's going to make you really impactful and get you promoted in a company, in an organization. And it's those kinds of things. Once you have, let's say, 2 finalists, right? If you have 2 finalists, both of those people, it's already been determined, can do the job. It's now these other, a little more difficult to get at, somewhat intangible things that the interviewer is trying to tease out. And it's things like, what is the leadership capability? Is this someone who is going to be able to inspire their staff? What kind of a leadership model are they going to follow? Are they going to be someone who is a coach who encourages, or are they going to be really prescriptive? Do I want someone who's really prescriptive in this role? And might not that be limiting?
And then, you know, relative to Ikigai, it's, you know, is it the passion? So the passion really has to be there, right? Because you can't fake that, right?
You can't fake it. Good interviewers can see whether the authenticity is lacking or not. Again, at that point of an interview process, it's these intangibles that are being evaluated, and it's a, you know, it's not scientific. It's not really easy to do, but that's what interviewers are looking for.
Okay, here's a question. How does Ikigai prepare you for a job search?
It can prepare you really in a couple of ways. And I gave the example of someone who, when he came out the other side of the Ikigai process, ended up pursuing something really, really different, landed the job, and now he's living his best life. That's not always what happens. I would say 75% of the time, maybe, I'm just picking a number out of my head, going through the process confirms for the individual that the road that they're on, that the skills that they've already achieved, and the type of role that they're looking for aligns with their purpose. So sometimes you're getting confirmation alignment of the road that you're on. I don't want to suggest that, you know, you do Ikigai coaching and all of a sudden, you know, you're going to go from being an accountant to being an actress. I mean, it's not that. But 25% of the time, roughly, people realize that even though they might have been very successful and done something really, really well, there's and they might have felt like this urge to do something else, but couldn't quite put their finger on it. The Ikigai coaching framework is meant to help tease that out so that you can at least look at it and investigate it and see if that's something that you want to pursue.
Okay, here's another question. What's the best way to elicit what the true values of and culture of a company is? An example is what's on their website is not followed in the real world. Are there clues, red flags to watch out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. One great way to do it is if you can make some connections on LinkedIn with some people who were there and see if they're willing to have a conversation with you about the culture, right? Nothing on the website is going to give you a clue about what the culture is. And again, if it's HBO was a very nurturing, collaborative, collegial organization. It was an absolute dream job. Now, when I joined, I had no clue. It was in the DNA of the org. It was there early on, and the leadership that took over time. Again, I was there over 30 years. They just kept that thing, that special sauce going. And I attribute some of the success of HBO to that, to the way people were led and developed in the organization. It wasn't just about the programming. the success of HBO went way beyond just the shows that we created and put on the TV. Another question may be very obvious to most of you is, if you're interviewing for a role, a question that I encourage that someone ask is this a new role? If it's a new role, what's the gap that you're trying to fill, so that you get an understanding of their thinking as it relates to that. If it's not a new role, where is the person who previously had this role? Oh, they're in another company. Okay. You don't have like a solid answer there, but you know that they left. If they were promoted or they took a lateral, you can have a conversation with that individual, right? So these are just little clues, and I'm not suggesting that someone who leaves the company is indicative of a company that you're not going to want to work for, but it's just nice to know, where that individual it is, and to the extent that you can reach out and have conversations with people, that's where you'll start to get a feel for the culture. Unfortunately, people don't learn that until they're in a situation, and at times it does happen. You find out that you're in a situation that just doesn't mesh with the way you want to work and the way you want to develop.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And there's another question. Can this be used with a team of C-level executives at one company and interactions between their individual purpose and the company purpose?
100%. There is team Ikigai coaching. I have not done that yet. I will be perfectly honest with you. The person who has created the framework has done this many, many times. He works with large organizations like Philips in Europe, and he has done large groups of Ikigai coaching. The second piece of that, which is Ikigai purpose for the organization, that is something that I'm not suggesting that companies don't have purpose and they're not thinking about purpose. They are, but coming up with a formal framework like he has already for individuals and for teams is what he's now working on, a framework for the organization itself, thinking of the organization as if it were an individual, and coming up with an Ikigai framework for that. That's something that's in progress. But team coaching for Ikigai, absolutely. And let me address the elephant in the room, which is, a lot of people ask, why would a company invest in Ikigai and have some of their staff go through it, maybe realize that they don't want to do this job anymore, that their passion is something else, and actually pay to have their employees leave? And the quick answer is, if those people left, maybe this is accelerating the process a little bit, but they would have left. Eventually, they would have felt the lack of passion for doing what they were doing. By helping them realize that, you now have advocacy. You have people that have left the company who are very likely going to say, I'll use HBO as an example. Wow, HBO helped me actually realize and understand. They invested in me, and they helped me understand that what I was doing is not what I was really meant to do, right? So now you have advocacy, as opposed to people who leave in a disgruntled way because they were in a situation that they really didn't like. So there's a lot of positives that come out of that, and companies are realizing this. And Ikigai, I can already see the tremendous interest in this. Organizations like McKinsey and publications like the Harvard Business Review are all over this stuff. The most recent Harvard Business Review had 4 articles on, not Ikigai, had 4 articles on purpose, on the topic of purpose. They wrote a really important piece of work about a year ago. And the title of the article, I'm doing this off the top of my head, was something like, help employees find their purpose or watch them leave. And it was a really, really important piece. And ever since then, McKinsey has been all over this. It's almost every month I'll see them write like 2 or 3 things on the topic. So it's
Wow.
out there. It's out there.
No, that's really interesting. And then someone sent me a message and said their thought about Ikigai and interviewing is anything that gets you thinking about your passion will help you in an interview. Learning to recognize and communicate your passions will make you a better interviewee. I agree with that, don't you?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So it is really, it can be very helpful in an to prepare for an interview or just prepare for a job search. Okay, here's another one. The example you use in Okinawa as a blue zone, that is pretty much the Hawaii of Japan. Have you any example of Ikigai working in Tokyo or Osaka?
I personally don't, but the concept, the framework works anywhere. The whole notion of the blue zones was an attempt to get underneath why are people in only these 5 places tending to be incredibly healthy and tending to live really, really long lives. And as it relates to Ikigai, one of the elements of that was the notion of passion and purpose. So it's not necessarily the location that I'm stressing. It's just identifying those places confused scientists up front, and they just didn't understand why they were witnessing what they were witnessing. And the answer is it's the eating wisely, the natural movement, all that kind of stuff. One was passion, purpose, what in Okinawa they call Ikigai. So it can work everywhere. I mean, I'm a finance strategy guy. I have to say, doing coaching, I'm living my best life right now, right? This is what I was meant to do at this point in time in my life. So I've found it.
That's really interesting. Okay, so Chris Hickey writes, I worked in enterprise IT sales for 20 years and have no Ikigai for that anymore. At least you know that, Chris. But that is my knowledge base and skill set. What suggestions do you have?
Can we unmute her and have her
yeah, Chris, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
There you go.
Okay. So Chris, give me a little bit more in terms of what your skill set is. Let's just talk about, technical.
So technical, I worked everywhere from digitalization and broadcasting, ultra pure water in clean rooms and nuclear power, enterprise IT infrastructure development, dev, low code, Salesforce, you name it, up and down the stack. Whenever I was working in it, I studied it and really got to know my offerings. Also managed services, outsourcing, everything to do with IT. The only thing that I came out of 20 years of working in sales is a lot of sales experience. But I, just like you, what I learned about myself is I enjoyed mentoring and coaching the teams that I worked with the most. Mm-hmm. Like being a leader with these teams and working with them, but that entire field, which seems to be prevalent. I mean, you really can't do anything in the world anymore, at least that's financially stable, that I've been able to find that isn't involved in some form of enterprise IT. So I was an account executive, a director, VP of sales, mm-hmm. A lot of sales things, but it was a real struggle for me.
Right. And that's not something that you would want to pursue any further.
I think I need to repackage it. I think I need to find an area where there's some passion and repackage it, perhaps in a smaller, more nimbler organization where mm-hmm. I can work more on the coaching and mentoring part of it. Like this whole thing you're talking about neuroscience. I mean, I could really see myself doing what you're doing, for example. It's these types of things that I find really interesting.
Mhm.
Well, it seems like you guys need to connect.
I was just going to say,
offline.
if you want to talk some more offline, just reach out to me. And Cheryl, I forget, did I email you the presentation so that people can get sort of my contact information after, or do I need to still send that to you?
I believe I have it, and if I don't, I will ask you
And
for it, but it
yeah,
will go out with the recording and
Today.
with all your contact information. So,
okay.
And we'll
Okay.
send that out today, and you'll
Yeah.
be on our YouTube channel too.
yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter. I'll do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Please feel free, and anyone else, if you want to have a sidebar conversation, just reach out and we can talk.
Okay, here's another question. What do you suggest for someone who does not know what they love? That's probably more than just a few people. It's my guess.
I'm not asking for the work. Speak to a coach.
Yeah.
Speak to a coach. Find. You can find a coach who, and honestly, even the background doesn't even matter. I've had financial people choose me because I'm in finance. I've had people pick me because I saw you do this Ikigai thing and it sounds amazing and I want to work with you. But coaching is never about coaching a problem. It's about coaching the person. So coaching is functionally agnostic. I work with scientists who are developing drugs in labs, and I don't know 80% of what they're doing, but it doesn't matter, because the issues that he's dealing with are the issues that anyone tends to have in terms of wanting to improve how you work with people and how you're perceived and how you show up and all of that kind of stuff. So, that's
So
really what
Peter, I've seen this a lot more lately, but do you think that more people are questioning why they're doing what they're doing and seeking more purpose and meaning in their work?
at a level that I almost cannot comprehend. And I think a lot of it has to do with the pandemic and
I agree.
the fact that we've been socially isolated. I know I had a client this morning who half of his team is in New York, half of his team is in Pittsburgh, right? Socially distanced. He's been working, occasionally going into the office in New York and meeting people. He's going to Pittsburgh next week, and a fair number of people he's going to be meeting face to face for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. That is a phenomenon that we have never seen before. And part of the what happened as a result of COVID, people working from home, is the irony of the convenience of working from home is people are working longer, way longer hours, and I would argue harder than ever before. And part of the reason why we've had this mass, resignation situation going on, I believe, is people are questioning the very fundamental concept of what it means to go to work today. They're questioning what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're doing it. They are rebelling against those companies that are insisting that they go back to work 5 days a week, because it's shown that from a productivity standpoint, that's not necessary. There is a collegial, and maybe a client need to be able to do that. But to answer your question, I'm seeing this questioning at a level that I don't think has ever existed before, and is also part of the reason why coaching has exploded. I've picked up, just in the last couple of months, over 20 clients.
Wow.
It has exploded. And it's people that are, not all of them, but a good number of them, really questioning what they're doing and want help thinking through these issues.
Okay, we have just a few more minutes. So why don't, if you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Peter directly while we have him.
Don't be shy.
I know.
And again, we can do anything you want, sort of, you know, off to the side at a future time if you want to dig a little deeper and just do it one-to-one. That's fine.
Hi, Peter. This is Ali. Just a quick question. How long does this Ikigai process take to do the assessment?
Each one of those circles, if you recall from the model, you love it, you're good at it, and the reality check, each one of those, I like to do them in one sitting. And again, they can take 2 to 3 hours, and we'll put a couple of weeks in between. And then there'll be a fourth session, at least one fourth session, to try to consolidate everything and come up with a, you know, now that you have this realization, okay, well, that's not enough. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to act on it, right? So there'll be a fourth session. So, you know, if you spread a couple of weeks apart, within a couple of months, I'm going to say like 6 to 8 weeks, we would be through it. And you ideally would have a good plan of action to move forward. So say a couple of months, just to be safe.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, Peter, thank you so much for agreeing to be on here and for sharing Ikigai with us. I think it's a great concept. And, you know, personally, I'm very interested in, you know, purpose and passion, and it's one of the reasons that we continue to offer our executive in transition boot camp. And but I love the whole concept of the best exercise to rise, to sit and rise and do that 40 times. Holy moly, that's hard.
Not
but
easy.
I agree. It's like, imagine. And then somebody else.
It is not easy. It is not easy.
And then somebody else said that they like to do, they like to work out with their books. I don't know what that means, but I thought that was pretty entertaining.
I think
and
it
then
means
maintaining
this.
a garden. Yeah, right. Maintain a garden, meat and fish in moderation. And then the whole concept of eat until you're 80% full. So these are all really great things. And you know, so many of us are, you know, reaching an age that at least, you know, not working is in sight. And but just, you know, even as you're starting your career, it's fascinating to think that you know, we can do it differently, and we can do it with that inner peace that I think Ikigai gives you, right?
Absolutely. On that point, I've even done Ikigai with a student. Coming out of school. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's one thing I see a lot of, you know, these kids coming out of college, and they want more passion and purpose in their life. They've seen their parents work for the almighty dollar, and they don't want to do it.
And I've also, you know, come across people who study accounting because their parents told them, you know, you'll get a good job, you make good money. And, you know, I had this one individual who was questioning that sort of midstream.
Yeah.
So.
No, this is interesting. Peter, thank you so much. We would love to have you back. And I think the content and the topic is really good. You've done an excellent job giving us an overview. Thank you.
Well,
So
thank you
everyone, in 2 weeks, we have Pat Romboletti. And if you don't know Pat, you need to know Pat. And she's going to be with us in 2 weeks from today. And we will have Peter back. We're going to send out the recording, send out Peter's contact information, reach out to him, and hopefully that Ikigai concept has resonated with many of you. So Peter, thank you. And everyone, enjoy the weekend and enjoy the holiday.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.